It was only a couple years ago that the Arizona Cardinals could, I would say fairly, be considered a complete and utter dumpster fire. It was not a good situation. They were not a good team. They were thin. They had missed on a lot of high draft picks. They, for whatever reason, just kept taking linebackers in the first round over and over and over again. Steve. A lot was wrong, right? But ever since, Monty's come to town, Gannon's come to town, they put together two really good off seasons in a row. Dare I say, the Arizona Cardinals are sneaky.
I think they're sneaky good. I'm gonna add the extra adjective. I think they have a chance to surprise, and it's largely because of the work of their GM and their new coach. We'll talk about both throughout this process, but yeah, I think the days of being able to write them off just because they're the Cardinals are gone.
That's the thing. I think people weren't really paying attention to them because when the Cardinals are bad, like there are some teams in the NFL where like if you're bad, America's still going to watch you play because like it's objectively funny. Like when the Jets are bad, like they're entertaining bad. When the Cardinals are bad, nobody pays attention. So everybody just kind of stopped watching Cardinals games. I mean, we didn't. We get paid to. But the fact that nobody was really paying attention to this Cardinals kind of stealth rebuild over the last couple of years means that they might surprise a lot of people. Not going to surprise us, but there are a lot of dudes here.
A lot more than there were a couple of years ago, to your point. And enough, I think, to make them competitive, even in a very competitive division. Are they going to win it? We'll save that analysis for the end. But
if they win the division, somebody in Vegas is making a lot of money. But
they're
okay.
on their way. The trajectory, you can see that from here, which a couple of years ago, it was a bridge too far.
Well, we have a lot to go over today. Again, talking about another very good offseason for the Arizona Cardinals, positioning themselves to be a sneaky fun, sneaky good, sneaky solid, just sneaky team in general. As you can tell, it's sunset here in downtown LA, but a new sun is rising in Phoenix. That was perfect.
Wow.
I'm proud of that one.
That is so pro. I feel like I should scoot my chair over farther this way. That's
Jay, roll the intro. Welcome back to the Bootleg Football Podcast. I'm Brett. That's EJ. Talking Arizona Cardinals today. And I'm going to try to be delicate about this, but you know me, I'm not very good at that. They weren't good in 2023. They were a 4-win team last year, but that was also kind of the plan. It was kind of expected. In fact, it was very expected. We knew that was what was going to happen. The roster just wasn't there yet. Of course, you got a rookie head coach. You got a quarterback coming off a torn, I think it was ACL, right? So we knew that they weren't going to be good, and they weren't good. What mattered was what happened after, right? How did they take the assets that they had to parlay that into being a solid roster and you know, kind of doing this active rebuild thing? That's the part that they really, really nailed, again, for the second straight year. So we will spend a little bit of time on 2023 today. Not too much time because I would say January through May mattered a lot more than August through December.
Think of it as a full sprint through last season, and we will be sprinting because we know that's not the point. And I think the Cardinals and Cardinals fans knew that wasn't the point too. Again, this was not like we went into last season when we were talking about them over the summer preview series and, oh, the Cardinals are going to be a new juggernaut. There was a lot of development to do. There were some things that happened last season that I think were, to your point, sneaky good. There were some flashes from new coaches and things that said, okay, if they get better groceries, they might bake a really good meal here. But last year was not that dinner. 4-13 overall, fourth in the division, 2-6 at home, 2-7 on the road, consistent, if nothing else, Cardinals fans.
Okay.
And 2-3.
That's
in the
one
last
way to
5
sell
games.
the sizzle.
Yeah, you got 2, 2, and 2. Oh, anyways, effectiveness summary is a combination of a couple of stats. The first one is called quarterback support. I came up with it. My buddy Arjun Menon, who now works for the Jets. in an analytics capacity. And QBS is 5 statistics, 3 offensive, 1 defensive, and 1 special team. And you can think of it as a rating for how a team sets the table for its quarterback to play. How much support do they give him to succeed? 0 is the worst team in the league. 100 is the best team in the league. The Cardinals were a 16.1 on that scale, and that ranked them 27th out of 32 teams. Again, not unexpected in terms of that ranking. The other score is Power Score. We introduced you to that score last year during this series, and it is simply 6 of a team's ranks in rushing offense, rushing defense, passing defense, points scored, and points allowed. We simply assign their NFL rank. Where did they finish? 10th, 15th, 20th. Add them all up and divide by 6. Lower is better because you'd like to be first in everything, but nobody is. So the Cardinals rushing offense, this is the highlight. Revel in this one. They were 7th.
They were actually really good at running the ball.
They were great at running the ball, and we'll talk a little bit about their offensive coordinator, Drew Petzing, and some of those things that we saw early in the season that were, I still think people probably weren't paying attention even in the beginning because, again, expectations were really low, but I remember texting you in like late September going, Drew Petzing's doing some fun stuff with the ground game. Might not matter, but it's pretty interesting.
Making chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Indeed, he did a fine job of it. Passing offense, on the other hand, again, with your starting quarterback out, it's never going to be great. 26th. Rush defense, 27th. Not great, but not necessary to be a good team. We'll talk about that later. Pass defense, though, just barely avoided the bottom spot, 31st.
There's reasons for that.
That is a nail in the coffin, though, in the modern NFL. If you cannot defend against the pass, you are not going to win a lot of football games. Points scored, 24th. Points allowed, 31st, same as the ranking against the pass. Not bouncing off the bottom, but darn close to it. And that really tells the story. If we add all those up and average them out, their power score is 24.3. That put them 29th overall. They performed just slightly worse than their quarterback support rating says they might have. I think it's splitting hairs. They were in the bottom 20s either way. The numbers pretty much match up with the result we saw on the field. I'm sort of fine with both of these rankings, again, in the fact that it led to this offseason.
It was a talent deficiency more than anything. I mean, we saw them play hard. Like, those guys played their ass off.
Yeah, they did not give up.
It was just they didn't have the dudes. You know, the entire roster was left in a very, very, very poor state. Arguably the worst state in the NFL. At least bottom 4
for sure
in the NFL after the prior regime. So they just didn't have the manpower, let alone not having your starting quarterback for half the year. They didn't get Kyler back till week 10. So there was not really a whole lot the coaches could do about it other than just try to get guys to play hard and buy into the system. They did that part. They were plucky. You know, they had some games where they just kind of let him get away because, again, it's when you have a rookie head coach and he's completely outgunned talent-wise, even against the New York Giants, like, yeah, you're going to lose games. But I respected that his guys never gave up. They clearly believe in him as a coach. They believed in this coaching staff. They believe in Rallis. They believe in Petzing. That was kind of what mattered, right, in 2023 was just building the culture, getting guys to buy in. Similar, I'm not saying they're going to be, but similar to how the Lions were a few years ago, where like they were awful. the roster was terrible. They had to string together a few good drafts and a few good free agency periods, but it was just about getting guys to buy into the culture. And in a lot of ways, I think Gannon had a rookie year similar to Dan Campbell. I think they have a different presence to them, but how hard their guys played in each of their first 2 seasons, I thought was pretty similar.
And the plan wasn't bad. Right? I think Gannon impressed me in his first year as a head coach that he had a plan and it was solid. They couldn't necessarily cash the check with the talent they had on the team, but the plan, the idea, the way he wanted to attack seemed really solid, and it was like, well, you just need some better athletes to make that happen. And folks knew that, but despite that, people didn't, hang up the white flag and basically walk out at midseason. They played hard. They ran the ball hard. There was a lot of effort. I think there was a lot of understanding, like you said, buy-in. And again, the scheme was interesting and kind of fun on the offensive side. I think, again, the pass game needs work, but That's more of a talent thing. The run game was downright fun, even with the guys they had. So I think there were a lot of sort of signs, if you were picking through the rubble, that there was something here and it was worthwhile and it was worth building.
Before I get into those scheme tendencies, by the way, and kind of some of the magic that these assistant coaches worked last year, I do want to thank Underdog Fantasy for making this show possible in the first place. They've done a lot for us as a company, as a show, including helping to fund this entire series. I'm not sure how many of you guys play Pick'ems or play best ball fantasy, but if you're curious about it, you want to check it out. Of course, best ball summer is going on right now. There's millions and millions and millions of dollars in prizes. So if you want to get in on that, do some best ball drafts. Maybe have your friends hop in. Maybe prepare for your home league by doing best ball drafts, because those are probably the best way to get an accurate mock draft and not just drafting against a bunch of CPUs on auto pick. So I use it for that reason personally. But I also do season-long pick'ems, and there is a season-long pick'em already live for the Arizona Cardinals, and it is one Marvin Harrison Jr. He is at, hold on, I have the number. He is at 7.5 receiving touchdowns, or 1,075 receiving yards for the season, higher or lower. They dropped that one basically the week after the draft as chum in the water, and you jumped on that immediately while you were still down here in LA and could play it.
I am literally looking at my entries, and it is the first one from after the first day of the draft.
By the way, if you didn't know this, Marvin Harrison Jr. is already going as wide receiver 9. So if you thought you were getting a discount on him, you're wrong. At least in fantasy, you're not getting a discount on him. We will go over a couple players that you will get discounts on, or kind of discounts on in this Cardinals episode a little bit later. But if you want to go check out Underdog Fantasy, if you want to draft Marvin in best ball, if you want to do a season-long pick'em, you want to do anything. It could be baseball, golf, anything like that. Check it out at the QR code on the screen or at the link in the description below. Promo code BOOTLEG will get you up to $250 in bonus cash, as well as a pick'em special in the lobby. Thank you once again to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring today's show. And with that, let's talk a little bit more about Marvin, but not in a fantasy sense, but in a practical sense, because we need to talk a little bit about scheme. Like, why did they prioritize the Marvin pick beyond just Marvin Harrison Jr.? Like, why take him over Joe Alt? Why take him over Malik Neighbors? Why take him over Roma Dunze? There was legitimate debate among a lot of people. Like, is it worth them even taking anybody there or trading down again like they've done in the past? We know Monty likes to wheel and deal. For me, while I was kind of going through the exercise of getting ready for this show, pulling a bunch of data about this offense, it's data that I kind of wish I pulled back in March, because if I went into the draft knowing some of this stuff, I would have been like, oh yeah, like, it's Marvin.
Unless they trade down, the big
it's
asterisk.
Not even really a debate, right?
Yeah.
So here's some stats that I pulled about this offense, and it kind of explains stylistically how they play. And keep in mind, this is all from week 10 onward, because I thought it was more fair to use the Kyler sample size than the entire season. So this is just the Kyler Murray-led, Drew Petzing-led Cardinals offense.
Yeah.
We established that they're really good in the ground game, but a big reason why they were really good in the ground game is they had a very diverse ground game. Mm-hmm. They lined up under center more, like even with Kyler, I know, shocker, they lined up more under center with him than he had under the previous regime. Keep in mind, they were in the shotgun in, I think, 83% of the time the season before, which was most in the NFL. They dropped it down an entire 10% to 73%. So again, they were still a pretty shotgun-heavy offense overall, but like that's significant. Like they went from first to ninth by Cardinals standards, by what we're used to seeing with Kyler Murray as the quarterback. That's a pretty heavy commitment to being under center. And their run game percentages, as a result, were pretty varied. Like, they didn't call anything more than 20% of the time, meaning outside zone versus inside zone versus power versus counter versus pin and pull. Everything was fairly even. Like, they weren't top 10 in anything other than counter and pull lead, but that's just because that was all they ran when they were in the gun. But as far as total run percentages, including under center and the shotgun, nothing was more than 20%. They actually called outside zone. They actually called power. They actually called a little bit of man. So that kind of helped their run game be more effective at punching above its weight than maybe it should have been. Again, if you're just looking at the roster, if you're looking at the talent available last year, like you wouldn't have expected them to be the 7th best run game by EPA per play in the NFL. But when you have a coordinator like Petzing that is just throwing everything that he's got at defenses, when it comes to formations, personnel groupings, under center, in the gun, in the pistol, like they were just trying to keep people guessing and using not deception, but I don't know, whatever a good synonym for deception is to keep people off balance. It worked.
In that case, it's variation. He's willing to call anything from just about anywhere on any given week. And that makes anybody in the NFL very difficult to prepare for. If you can't go into down and distant tendency and say, look, like 85% of the time, we're going to see this from them. We know. We talk about teams like this all the time. You know what we're running. We know what we're running. We're just going to try and run it better than you. That wasn't the Cardinals' run game. The Cardinals' run game was Drew Petzing reaching into his bag and pulling out a run play and going, yeah, we'll run that. And then throwing it back in there and shaking it up again and going, might be the same thing, might be something completely different. I don't know. You don't know. How can you defend it? And a lot of defenders going, dude, they're running everything. And at every place of the field with all personnel, like you said, out of all formations. That was the thing that really impressed me even in the early season, even though these numbers are from later in the season, was you saw a lot of stuff. Usually new coaching staff, a little bit more of a simple install. Mm-hmm. Like within the first 5 weeks, you saw an example of just about every kind of run concept, usually multiple times from different formations. And it was like, wow.
I mean, they kind of had to.
Yeah, but it worked.
And they coached their asses off last year.
Yeah, they're busy.
They were busy. But going back to the Marvin part of this, the reason why Marvin is kind of the key to everything, the particular stat that I was looking at was motion percentage. You know, I had went into again, studying for this episode, thinking their lack of motion under Cliff was a Cliff thing. I think it might actually be a Kyler thing because they were still last in motion usage, again, from week 10 onward when Kyler was on the field. They were still last even with Petzing. I kind of feel like whoever is calling the offense for Kyler from year to year across regimes, I kind of feel like their lack of even trying to use motion at all has been more in an effort to keep Kyler comfortable because I don't think Kyler likes it very much. And some quarterbacks are like that. Some quarterbacks like having a static picture,
right?
So that if safeties are moving, it's because it's what the defense is doing, as in what the defense is calling, rather than as a reaction. Because that can almost be a way for Kyler to see the field a little bit better. If the rotation isn't caused by motion, then he means that they're rotating into something else, and he can just kind of identify that post-snap picture. Again, static versus motion, again, it just kind of helps some quarterbacks see it better. And some quarterbacks like having motion because if they know that they're going to get a certain rotation based on motion, it's more of a pre-snap versus a post-snap mentality. I know we're getting into the weeds here about how quarterbacks process things, but Kyler just seems to be one of those guys who likes having static pictures so that if DBs are moving and if linebackers are moving, it's for a reason, and he could just immediately identify that reason and make a decision. A lot of air raid quarterbacks are like that. Aaron Rodgers famously was like that for a long time. At least in the Green Bay years, he was like, I don't like people moving around. I just kind of want to do my thing, right? So I kind of feel like that's not a Petzing thing. That's a Kyler thing, which, fine, if that's a preference, okay, whatever. But also when you factor in, they don't use a lot of bunches. They don't use a lot of stacks. They were 19th in terms of bunch looks. That means that receivers are spread out. They're not on the move. You're not using motions and stacks to make DBs back off. So every one of your receivers has to stand up there and box every play. Like, you are going against press corners. You are out there surviving every play. They didn't really have guys that could do that. They had Greg Dortch, and I love Greg Dortch, trying to basically carry this offense, being the little engine that could out there. But like they didn't have a true dominant number one X receiver like what DeAndre was for a time there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Michael Wilson is like, we like Michael Wilson, but he's not that. He's never going to be that. He's more of a complementary piece. Hollywood was never that. He was never going to be that. Rondale was definitely never going to be that. But in the absence of having DeAndre Hopkins, like they didn't have anybody who, okay, line up and go beat that dude. We need to get bailed out of this hole. It's 3rd and 7. Go make a fucking play. Like they didn't have that. And so when looking at these numbers, I was like, okay, they're not trying to do anything other than set up these one-on-ones, but they don't have anybody who can win a one-on-one. Yeah, Marvin makes sense. Like Joe Alt would have been great for them. Malik probably would have been really good for them too. And I mean, Rome's Rome. He's going to be good anywhere. But as far as who is the player in this class in the context of this offensive philosophy that made the most sense for what they didn't have? Yeah, it's probably Marvin.
They needed an alpha winner. They needed to round out their room to make, like you said, many things or even all things that they do work. It's like a key or an unlock. And they had a lot of complementary guys. And I think we even said this in the episode last year when we were talking about the Cardinals. We're like, they have a lot of the same guy. They have a lot of overlap in terms of roles. You could say that Dortch and Rondale could do a lot of the same things. And we liked Wilson as an ad, but he's, I think, a classic number 2, and that is not a backhanded compliment. I like him a lot, and I think he's going to be great in that role with Marvin pulling most of the coverage. I think Wilson can pay that off. But without that guy, he becomes the default or de facto number 1, and we've seen that over and over again in NFL history when that guy, who's not quite the guy, sort of gets elevated and pushed into that role, and the expectations are there, and they're like, well, go win all by yourself with no help against press when people know you're coming. They just don't quite have that level of juice, or they're not going to do it consistently enough that you can keep the offense moving. Things stall out. And you get back to that need for a dominant alpha that can win, who is already very polished. I mean, stop me if this sounds exactly like Marvin Harrison Jr., but, can win all over the field at all depths, speed, size, hands, all the pre-scouting reports that we gave you before the draft. They needed to round out their room with that piece of skill set. It's going to make all the other receivers they have better. It's not overlap. I mean, not that many people would overlap with MHJ anyways, but he fills that role like very clearly by himself, puts Wilson in the right spot, puts Dortch in the right spot, and allows them to do a lot of things. And look, when everything breaks down, yeah, Marvin's down there somewhere. Go for it. You've got a good chance of converting.
And even if he's not open, it's probably because he's getting doubled because you're going to have to.
For sure.
Like he was the most doubled receiver in college football by a wide margin, and still won on a lot of those, by the way. Go to the Matt Harmon episode that we did before the draft, and he'll break down the numbers for you. Like it was staggering how much true double coverage Marvin got in college, and it just kind of didn't matter. So if he's not open, it's because NFL teams are also double teaming him, and one of my favorite defensive coach sayings is double teams are expensive.
Yes.
Like if you're committing a true double team to somebody, everybody else is out there swimming in deep water by themselves. Like you don't have the resources to provide the help within a coverage structure that all of your other guys are used to getting, right?
Yeah. So
say, for example, in quarters, and Cardinals fans should be familiar with quarters because they literally ran it more than anybody else last year on defense. Like Gannon loves it. How it's typically structured is if you're playing quarters against a 3-by-1, your backside corners by themselves. That's in man coverage, right? Nick Saban calls it MEG, means man everywhere he goes. And then you are pushing 5/3 or at worst 5/4 to the other side of the field so that we have numbers. Typically, it's going to be 5/3. That means that everybody on the field side has help. They can basically play one leverage and not have to worry about trying to play guys head up in space. They can just play their leverage because they're going to have a safety inside. They're going to have a linebacker inside. They don't have to worry. They can chill. And there's still ways to kind of manipulate those, right? But it's hard. It's really hard.
Double team and chill.
Double team and chill. Like, that's kind of what it is. That's why the Cardinals ran it so damn much. They didn't have the corners to play man. They were literally last in the NFL in playing cover one last year defensively. Like, they didn't have the dudes. They did it like 8% of the time. They're like, fuck that. We're not playing man.
Yeah, that was a necessity.
That was a necessity. And now, again, part of the reason why their pass defense wasn't great is they still didn't have that good corner backside that they could leave one-on-one without getting destroyed. We'll see when we talk about the draft section if maybe they got one. But that is what Marvin does. Is he changes that equation, because if you can't win that backside one-on-one, like teams used to not be able to win that backside one-on-one against DeAndre Hopkins, now you got to call new stuff. Now you got to play quarter, half. Now you're playing, again, a flat corner and a deep half safety to his side, and you're playing quarters to the other side, except, oh God, what if they go 3 verts on that side? Do we have a linebacker running for? Oh, fuck, it's a touchdown. Like, mathematically, there are problems if you are forced into running that. So get a guy like Marvin who can force teams into running that, and it just creates opportunities for everybody else. I think Marvin, more than anything else, this is going to sound like a huge waste of a pick, he's an unlock for the rest of the team, more so than he is going to go out there and be like a crazy hyper-productive player as a rookie. Like, he will be productive, but it's what he provides to everybody else that matters the most.
Yeah, I do think he is a key. He is an unlock. We talked about that earlier. That is going to open up. They have other good players on offense. And again, it's going to make those good players all better. It's a cascade all the way down. Trey McBride's going to get more opportunities because Marvin's there. Michael Wilson's going to get more of the right opportunities that he's suited to win on. Same for Dortch. Like, it's all of those things. And Marvin can run a little bit. His nickname's Maserati.
More than a little bit. Oh, by the way, Maserati Marv, not the best Marvin nickname.
Not the best Marvin nickname.
Aston Marvin. It was right there.
I know.
It was right there.
You left it on the table, folks.
It's so better.
So when Mr. Fast Car Marvin runs down the field,
Toyota Hilux Marvin.
Maybe a little bit faster than that. It's going to open up space for James Conner in the run game, for Petsing's run game, because now safeties aren't able to just crash, right?
Yeah, it's going to help Trey Benson. It's going to help Trey McBride. It's going to help all the Treys. If your name's Trey and you live in Arizona, you're going to get helped by Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, this season's going to be good for you.
By the way, speaking of a lot of the coaches that we brought up by name, as well as the GM that we brought up by name, probably time that we actually talk about the power structure that's been in charge of this active rebuild. They've done a phenomenal job so far, at least considering the resources they had available to them. Monty, good God, he's... Talk about virtuoso performances in back-to-back years. Isn't he just a breath of fresh air for Arizona? I mean, I don't want to talk too much shit, but considering what used to be there to what's there now, Monty, literally, take a bow, man.
Monty's performance has been so different, and breath of fresh air is perfect because it is a sweeping change from what was before. And we'd grown tired of, I know Arizona Cardinals fans are like, you'd grown tired of. Yes, we understand the previous regime didn't work, and it was sort of endless promise of hope, and it didn't work really, especially because of all the personnel decisions. Monty comes in his first 2 years. You said he likes to wheel and deal. He absolutely does. He's always looking for an opportunity. He is not completely wedded to his guy. This is my guy. I'm going to trade up to. He'll trade up to get him if he thinks he needs to, but he's also as equally willing to trade down, get picks, amass. He knows the roster he inherited a couple of years ago was in terrible shape. He's going to leverage whichever opportunity is going to give him the greatest impact over the wide range, because this is not a 1-player. This is not a 5-player away roster. It certainly wasn't. It's getting closer.
It's darn near that now, which in 2 years,
yep.
The fact that at this point, considering where they were 2 years ago, we could look at this roster and be like, yeah, they're like 4 guys away.
And it's because of that attitude. It's because of that approach, that flexibility. Hey, I'll go up because I think the guy's really worth it. Hey, I'll go down and down again, which is what he did last year in the draft. And that flexibility, he is a wheeler dealer. He is as active as it gets, and he needed to be because there was so much work to do. But he didn't come in with, I would say, a rigid approach. He came in with one of the most flexible approaches in the NFL. I think it makes him one of the most fun GMs to watch on draft day because you just never know. You're like, I don't know, he could go up. I'm sure he's got a guy in mind, but, move him off his spot. Give him enough picks, he'll go down. It's fascinating to watch him work. And then this year was stick and pick. There was a lot of speculation because of that they might again try and leverage that high pick for multiple other picks. Nope. We got a guy in mind. We like the talent. So that multiplicity of approaches is a little bit like what they did in the run game. It's a very sort of equal reflection in terms of the front office. So Monty, I've been incredibly impressed, if you can't tell, with his work during the first couple of years. Jonathan Gannon also impressed me. I really thought that Shane Steichen was the guy when Steichen and Gannon both came out, both got head coaching opportunities. I thought, Steichen's the one I'm going to favor or be more impressed by, and very impressed by Shane Steichen. But also, it was more of a both situation. It wasn't like, I like Steichen like I thought. Gannon's kind of struggling. Gannon didn't struggle because he couldn't coach. Gannon struggled because he had a personnel shortage that Monty was busy addressing, but there just weren't enough guys in the barn to get it done. I was impressed with Gannon for all the reasons we talked about at the top of the podcast. Underneath that, we've already said Drew Petzing's name several times, the offensive coordinator. Came out with a bang. Again, came out of the blocks firing, was very active. I think that's a hallmark of this whole coaching staff is they're going to try stuff.
Yeah.
They're going to try lots of stuff. They're not going to stop working. They're not going to stop innovating. And I really appreciate that energy, and I think it does rub off within the building. Defensive coordinators, Nick Rallis, we'll talk a little bit more about his guys. And really that corner situation, he too came into a place where he didn't have the guys to defend the pass. He knew it. He tried to throw a lot of stuff at the wall.
He also didn't have the guys to rush the passer or to stop the run.
It was like, so what do you really want me to do this season, Coach? Because this is what I'm working with. Special teams, Jeff Rogers, very experienced special teams coach, has been in the league a long time. And then, interestingly enough, the Cardinals also list their pass game coordinator and wide receivers coach, Drew Terrell, as a coordinator. So he is a fourth coordinator, if you want to say that.
That means they like him a lot.
Yeah. They put him on the top of the website. It's not an accident.
My main comment about Gannon and Rallis is look at the Eagles' defense when they left. Like, don't judge them as coaches based on the talent they were working with in Arizona.
Sure.
Judge them as coaches based on how Philly absolutely fucking fell apart without them.
Yeah.
Especially those linebackers, because Rallis was a linebacker coach too. Eagles had the worst linebacker group in the league last year, and it wasn't close.
No.
So, yeah, he matters.
Yeah, think of them for why they got the job, what that resume was, what those credentials were, and then think about that with a refilled coffer from Monty doing all of his work. On offense, Ben Steele, the tight end coach. Again, if your guys have a major jump in production or efficiency or recognition or all three, you're going to make this list. His work with Trey McBride should not be overlooked. So McBride went from 29 catches, 265 yards, and 1 touchdown in his first season to 81 catches, 825 yards, and 3 touchdowns in his second season, his first season under Ben Steele. Yeah, that's going to get you a mention on the coaches section. Impressive work. Trey McBride was my TE1 the year he came out. A lot of people were like, after his first year, that's a miss for you. And I was like, he didn't stop being a good player.
He's just on a really bad team.
Literally 1 year later, he goes from 265 to 825. Under 30 catches to over 80 catches. Like, yeah, he's a good player, folks. And Ben Steele found the unlock there. Autry Denson is the running back coach. James Conner and Amari DiMercato averaged 5 yards per carry in Denson's first season with the Cardinals. Denson was a running back at Notre Dame himself, was drafted by Tampa and spent time with 5 NFL teams and 1 CFL team, so he knows of which he speaks. On defensive special teams, Derek LeBlanc is the DL coach. Now, this is more than what he did do for what we talked about last year, what he's going to do. So he's going to be responsible for getting Darius Robinson up to speed as a starter. Again, another high pick out in the desert. When you are a coach and you are handed a high draft asset that is very necessary, in the Cardinals' case, it certainly is. They need some pass rush. Derek LeBlanc's going to be in the spotlight to help Robinson get up to speed, and Rob Rodriguez is the outside linebacker coach. He has an interesting group to work with. This is a really mixed bag of old regime stuff that was misused. I think these pieces were misused. We can say that.
It's the island of misfit toys out there.
That's right. And it hasn't been unlocked. We're talking about Zaven Collins, B.J. Ojolari, Dennis Gardeck, Victor Dimukeji. Xavier Thomas came in the draft this year. Tyreek Smith came over from Seattle. Cameron Thomas is still there. This is a bunch of down-the-board bootleg favorites in that mix. Like, we liked a lot of those guys coming out. We had high hopes for them, even if they were lower draft picks. It's going to be fascinating to see what Rodriguez can do with all those guys, because there's a lot of talent there. And if he can mold those in and find those roles they're good at, because the old regime was not good at that. They were very good at putting the right guy in the wrong spot so that he underperformed. And that was a hallmark of that regime. Like, that happened consistently. And it's one of the reasons that the cupboard was so bare, because they brought in very talented guys that we liked and then sort of misused them and miscast them, moved them all around, gave them a bunch of extra responsibilities, and they never really developed. So, like you said, Rodriguez inherits all these guys who don't have great pedigrees necessarily. Some of them have been productive at other stops or overachieved in the case of guys like Gardeck. He's just got this weird mix. I can't wait to see what he does with it.
There are a bunch of guys on this team that are just fun to watch. Again, it was, well, not a bad team anymore. It was a bad team, but there are some holdovers from that regime, for the dozens of us that would watch Arizona Cardinals games every week. We're like,
there are dozens of us.
It's pretty fun. Like, James Conner's pretty fun.
Yep.
Dortch, the
Very
human
fun.
Dortch.
The human
He's
Dortch. Great nickname.
Gardeck, love him.
Wilson, I think, was, I don't want to say a revelation, but definitely showed enough flashes to be worthy of a starting spot, be kept around and developed. There were fits and starts of, this could be interesting, but they just need more dudes. They need to be able to pull that on both sides of the ball and work together. And there were just too many canyons to overcome in the first season, but I like where they're going.
Which, by the way, it's a good segue to our Underdog Top 3 segment, because Greg Dortch is literally one of our Underdog Top 3.
Might he be featured?
He's wide receiver 92, EJ. Which means he's not even being drafted.
Yeah.
And he's probably going to get the third most catches on the team, behind Marvin and behind McBride. And he's going as wide receiver 92. I'm not saying you need to go out there and draft him as your wide receiver 4, folks, but wide receiver 92 for Greg Dortch. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like, what, am I wrong? Like, is he not a good player? Like, I love Greg Dortch. How is he wide receiver 92? He's not even being drafted.
What is Josh Downs' ADP?
Honestly, it might be higher. I got to look it up. But
I bet it is, but we're talking about similar roles, right? We're talking about a third wide receiver in an offense.
Oh, wait. No, I was thinking of Josh Dobbs. No, Josh Downs is definitely higher. Right. I was like, Josh Dobbs is probably going as like a 16th rounder.
I was like, you only think it might be a little higher? I was like,
no. Yeah, Downs is definitely
I'm pretty
higher.
sure it's higher. Anyways, we're talking about similar roles, right? We're talking about there are bigger receivers who are going to be the focal points of their offense, and then the third guy is there to be able to leverage those opportunities, right? That's Dortch's role in this offense. It's Downs' role in Indianapolis. It's the same. Now, talent-wise, I don't think they're all that dissimilar. I really like Downs, but I also like Dortch. So if you have one, you can't sort of say, I love this, but I'm not wild about this. They're pretty close to the same in terms of skills and role. And this is what we're talking about with Marvin Harrison. If you really believe that Marvin Harrison is going to be good as a rookie, even as a focal point, all these opportunities open up. Greg Dortch is going to get even more chances.
Let me put it to you this way. This team willingly chose to have Desmond Ridder on their roster in sending off Rondale Moore for Desmond Ridder because they like Dortch that much.
Yeah.
Like, as far as the battle for who's like the small, shifty, number 3 option on the team, like, Dortch won that battle. He's the guy. Like,
Still
he's
there.
it. So if you really like Michael Wilson and you're taking him ahead of Dortch, like I get it.
Okay,
You
sure.
know, if you think he's gonna somehow be the fourth, maybe fifth,
But what's
option,
Wilson's ADP?
much higher. In fact, I'm curious. I'm going to look it up.
Curious because again, if Wilson's ADP is in like, I don't know, let's say the 50s or the 60s,
like among just receivers, it probably. I would be stunned if it's below Dortch.
right?
Because people like Michael Wilson a lot.
Yeah,
Not that I don't.
and he's going to get opportunities. But if he's in the 50s or 60s, Greg Dortch shouldn't be 30 points below that.
Okay, so Wilson is wide receiver 78. So not that
All right.
much farther ahead. But also that means that everybody is drafting Marvin and Trey McBride, and that's
it.
Like they're not taking anybody else.
I was going to say 78th indicates to me it's much lower than I thought it would be. Not much lower. It is lower than I thought it would be by a fair amount. And that means there isn't faith in the Cardinals passing game because gestures at everything, history, offensive line play, just being unsure of whether or not, Gannon and Petzig are going to be able to make it work with what they've got. So, yeah, they're going with talent, proven production, and then that's it. Nope, no more.
By the way, Trey McBride is not on our underdog top 3. I know people are probably looking at the list and saying, like, where's Trey McBride? He's not there because he's TE3. And he's well-deserved, by the way. But that's not a value.
It's not a value, but it is a validation of what we thought about Trey McBride coming out of Colorado State. I had him as TE1. Some people that year said, you're nuts. Like,
was that the Dulcich year?
Yeah.
I think I had Dulcich 1, and I think I had McBride I think I had
fourth.
McBride in my top 4.
Yeah, I think he was 4th for you.
What other tight ends came out that year? I can't even remember.
I was like, no, Trey McBride, mostly because of his two-way play. I mean, we'll talk about him in a little bit, but yeah, he's not in this section because no value at 3.
Yeah, no, he's awesome. He does everything too. He
blocks.
He's great after the
off.
catch.
Yep.
He's good in the red zone.
Great player.
Great player. Like he's TE3 in fantasy, but he might by the end of this year be considered like TE3 in real football, like overall. Like and is a him, Laporta. We'll see if the ageless Travis Kelce does Kelce things again. But like by the end of this year, people might be looking at Laporta, Trey McBride, and then either Kittle, Kelce, or Andrews as like the 3 best tight ends in the league. So, boy, they nailed that pick. They needed to.
If you're talking about somebody in the handful of top 6 at their position in the NFL, and we just named 6 possible guys, maybe there's 7. If you're in that mix, if you're in the top 6 or 7, not even the top 10, but solidly in the top 6 or 7 with a chance to be 5th, 4th, 3rd at the end of the year, talking about a very, very talented football player. You're talking about an elite football player. And elite and football players, not labels that have gone together with a lot of Cardinals in recent history.
So the other 2 that we have in the underdog top 3 are actually both of their running backs because I want to have a discussion about this. James Conner is at RB27 and Trey Benson is at RB30. They are right next to each other.
I know.
Truth be told, I see justifications for both of them. Again, this is a really good run game. I think it's going to keep being a really good run game. Ideally, the pass game is going to be much improved to give both of these running backs more red zone opportunities. We know they can both catch the ball. Benson is especially deadly in the screen game. I think there's room for both of them to be really, really productive. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that they're both going to beat this current ADP, but oftentimes when we've done this for other teams, I'm like, I don't like the value of this guy, but I definitely like the value of this one. So if I had to choose and I'm trying to moneyball this thing, I'll take the second one, right? When it comes to these Arizona running backs, I'm kind of good with either one.
This is the classic potential over production debate. Benson is the potential. Conner does nothing but produce when given the chance. Over and over and over again. I am done betting against James Conner, by the way, because all he ever does is prove me wrong. he just keeps outperforming what I think is possible. One of the great stories in the NFL, and just a completely self-made player who keeps grinding, keeps producing. Again, because he plays in the Arizona market, he is perpetually underrated. I am going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's the experienced back in this offense. He understands it. He's well liked by the coaches. He's going to get first opportunities. However, as we move to the potential part of this argument, Trey Benson was my RB1 for a reason. Dude is wild explosive with the run, with the pass. He's going to get his opportunities, and when he does, I think he's going to pay him off. He's an extremely talented running back, and man, if he gets just a crack of daylight, he can go the distance on any play. It's going to be difficult if that occurs to not put him in the lineup, but I think Connor's going to keep the door pretty firmly shut. Benson will get his opportunities in relief for sure. I don't think that balance is going to be 50-50 though, because man, you give James Conner the ball, he pays it off. He is productive. He is a workhorse. He shows no signs of slowing down. I think he's going to get sort of the right of first refusal in this offense. Benson's going to get those opportunities. If he pops some early ones, there's going to be cry for more equality. And that's a good problem for the coaching staff to have. That would mean they hit on that pick as well.
Did you realize that one of our mutual friends is James Conner's former coach?
I don't think I did.
Nate Tice.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Nate Tice was James Conner's RB coach at Pittsburgh.
Oh, I did know that. But I
look at that. 2 Nate Tice mentions on the pod today.
Just get a third chair. It's not that far away. We could fly him out. He'd be here in a couple hours.
That's probably why he watches them so damn much, because he loves James Conner.
He should. No, that's awesome. Yes, that was stuff somewhere in the dusty recesses of my brain. And it's more recognition than knowing. When you say it, I'm like, yeah. But I couldn't have. If it was a test, folks, I would have failed. I wouldn't have put that down.
It also tells you how long James Conner's been in the league, that Nate Tice was his coach in college, because Nate coached a while ago. He's been in the media for a while.
Yep.
I miss you, Nate. I don't know if you're ever going to watch this, but next time you're in LA, come say hi.
Yeah, we'll send it to him.
With all that being said, though, moving on to the meat of the offseason discussion, all this roster turnover that we've been talking about. Why don't we go over some of the actual names that they got rid of to make room, and then we'll go over the names they brought in.
Yeah. These names might not be notable to folks outside of Arizona, many of them. Josh Woods, the linebacker, he's there because he played more than 50% of the snaps. You got to replace that. Again, they have a plan. They got a lot of players. They could rotate through that. DJ Humphries, the left tackle, 81% of the snaps. He is not back. Marquise Brown, of course, heads to the Chiefs. And big news, Rondale Moore, as we mentioned, is now a Falcon. And Leki Fotu is a Jet. Now, only 23% of the snaps for Leki Fotu, but again, interior defensive lineman with a very specific purpose. Leki Fotu is a human tree stump, and you got to have those run stoppers, those, gap and a half to 2 gap players who can be in there and do one thing, which is make sure you're not going to get runs through the middle gaps. So Leki Fotu moves on as well.
When it comes to the Hollywood Brown discussion, there's a lot of debate about, was it a wise decision to not just pair him with Marvin, pair him with Dortch, pair him with McBride, and really lean into just having weapons galore. Why not make more effort to just combine everything? Why send him to Kansas City? Or not send him to Kansas City, but let him go to Kansas City, right? For me, it comes down to what we talked about earlier, which is the nature of this offense, how static it is, how little it protects receivers. And there's some offenses that protect receivers. They use a lot of motion. Yeah. They use a lot of stacks. They use a lot of bunches. Look at Miami. And Miami has great receivers, by the way, like Tyreek, Waddle. They got speed, but they protect those guys. Mm-hmm. They keep them on the move. They manufacture space so that they can work. This offense doesn't do that. And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. It's just acknowledging, stylistically, that's what they are. And there's advantages to it. There's disadvantages to it. They opt to create space through spreading things out and kind of allowing their guys to take advantage of one-on-ones if they can win them. They didn't have anybody to win them. Now they do. But that was their philosophy. It was like, we don't need to protect guys. We need to get guys that don't have to be protected.
Right.
And Hollywood doesn't really fit that bill to me. Marvin fits it. Trey fits it. Dortch as a slot receiver where, he's going to be off the line of scrimmage and kind of getting a little bit of space, he fits it. But I think if you're looking at what they're receiving, or their group of pass catchers is now across the board, including Trey McBride, I think Hollywood clearly was not a philosophical fit. I think they wanted size, they wanted physicality, they wanted people who, when they get punched in the face at the line of scrimmage, they don't fall down. That wasn't Hollywood. So I get it. I should say I get the Cardinals fans that are like, yeah, but deep ball go Burr. But at the same time, if you're just looking at how Petzing is organizing this offense, or rather what he believes in philosophically, it just didn't make sense.
I got a much simpler explanation.
What's that?
Marquise Brown, $7 million. Greg Dortch, $1.1 million.
I mean, I've never known Cardinals ownership to not factor in money. How about that? Is that diplomatic enough?
And honestly, if you had kept Hollywood Brown, you would most likely be playing him inside for the reasons that we talked about. You'd be playing Wilson and MHJ outside, and Hollywood would be your slot.
Yeah.
A $7 million slot who still needs some protection, right? Can't rotate him in terms of, put him to the outside. He's not as effective against the type of coverages you're talking about. So there's still some limitations. And he's literally 7 times as expensive as the guy they retained.
Yeah, from a financial perspective, the Cardinals are usually going to go with the cheaper option, especially if the production on paper could be comparable.
Right.
Like Cardinals fans know this. I'm not offending.
Occam's
I'm not
razor.
offending them at all, right? Yeah. But they know if they have an opportunity to not spend money, they're going to not spend money.
Sure.
They're kind of known for that. But at least in this instance, it makes a lot of sense from a team building perspective too.
Yeah.
All right. In terms of who they actually did spend money on, because it does happen sometimes, LJ Collier got retained at $1.3 million. Let's see, Greg Dortch, again, like we said, got retained at $1.125. So, yeah, $1.25 million. See, I can do math good sometimes.
Ooh, math good. Math go Burr.
Aaron Brewer, the long snapper, is back. I just wanted to mention it because he's a long snapper, and we never talk about long snappers ever.
There you go.
Let's see. Carter O'Donnell is back as a backup guard. Elijah Wilkinson is also back as a backup guard. Jesse Luketa, I really did like him coming out of Penn State. I'm still kind of waiting for him to pop like I thought he could. Again, trying to be nice about it here. He was great in college, but he's back again at a little under $1 million. Keith Ishmael is back as well, just retaining all of their very, very cheap, emphasis on the word cheap, offensive line depth. Chris Barnes, linebacker, also coming back. I think the most expensive in-house retention they had was $2 million. So, again, that was the goal here. Of let's not spend too much that we don't have to.
Clean house, keep the players we like for reasonable prices, build through the draft, trades, free agency if we need to. But in general, this was not a spending spree team.
I'm actually curious. Let's see. What's their cap space right now? Yeah, so they have $35 million still available in cap space this year. So it's not like they didn't have room to sign people. They just didn't want to. And they are second in available, at least projected available cap space next year at $88 million. So if they actually decide to spend money next year, they could.
And if this base team is successful in its second year and shows progress in the win column, in the offensive development column, and you've got $88 million next year,
now we're cooking.
It becomes a very desirable destination for free agents.
In terms of third-party additions, they did spend a little bit on Sean Murphy-Bunting at about $8.5 million. Evan Brown also brought him at about $2.4 million. Bilal Nichols, still kicking around, brought him in at $7 million. Zay Jones to round out the receiving corps at about $2.3 million. Jonah Williams, like I mentioned at the top of the pod, they brought him to be their starting right tackle at $15 million. That one's a little
touchy subject for you.
If they are going to spend money, if they are going to spend $15 million to be precise,
Yeah.
Jonah Williams, like, we're going upper register for this one. Jonah Williams, really? That's what we're doing.
I'm going to imagine that they either have a coaching relationship or some really good beta on Williams that we're not aware of, because let's say players of a similar caliber, for the most part, aren't getting that kind of money.
No.
They're getting like 7, 8, sometimes maybe 10.
In the current market, they would crack 10.
Right.
15, though.
A third more.
Yeah. Again, it's not like they're out of money. Like, they still have $35 million, but out of all the guys to spend on, that was the interesting one.
It was a chin-scratching choice for sure.
Justin, and by the way, I know Cardinals fans are going to be like, yeah, but why? Look at the pressure allowed percentages. Like, he was consistently getting annihilated in Cincinnati. Like, Cincinnati threw a lot of resources at replacing him.
And moving him around.
And
getting
moving him
him
around.
and doing all kinds of stuff. And not much worked, which is why he's no longer there.
And that's why Marius Mims is. So, again, I didn't like that signing at all. At least at that price point. Justin Jones, I did like this one at about $10 million. So there were some signings that I liked. Again, the Murphy Bunting signing I thought was really good value. The Justin Jones signing I like. Zay Jones to be your wide receiver 4 or 5. I like that one a lot too. The Evan Brown deal I thought was very economical. Like there's some good stuff in here, but I saw that and I was like, Monty, you were doing so good.
If you're gonna trigger Brett, sign Jonah Williams for $15 million.
You want your quarterback to get hurt. Yeah. Sign Jonah Williams. Anyway, let's talk about something happier. Let's talk about where Monty really nailed it. The draft.
Again, Monty stacked picks for this draft. They have a ton of draft picks. They bring in a lot of talent. We've talked about how much they needed to do that. Starts right at the top with Marvin Harrison Jr., MHJ, for those of you that aren't keeping up. That's the shorthand for the rest of the season. At pick 4 overall, it was a stick-in pick situation. They identify him as a key to unlocking their offense. Darius Robinson, also their other first-round pick, at 27. Big, long, strong defensive end out of Missouri who had a really good Senior Bowl, but has a lot of great tape in the SEC going against all these big, long, strong tackles of the future and had great success. So hopefully is going to bring them more run-stopping ability and pass rush in the same package. That's their hope. Max Melton, the cornerback from Rutgers, in the second round at 43. This was early for me because of some of Max Melton's effectiveness in college. As an athlete, he is off the charts. I was at the end of the long jump, broad jump, at the combine, watched him go. I think it was 11 feet.
It was 11.4, I think, right. Actually. It
Jumped,
was crazy.
Jumped right towards my face, 11 feet. He is a tremendous athlete, twitched up, makes some big impact plays or made some big impact plays in college, but also gave up a bunch, and his tackling was a problem.
A corner that couldn't tackle. Shocker.
Yeah, but his missed tackle percentage was a quarter of his potential tackles.
All right, well, even by DB standards, that's kind of rough.
That's a little high. So,
yeah.
Second round, it's not that I don't think he has potential or he can't clean some of that stuff up. Picking him at 43 overall was early for me. So, they need help in the secondary, but I wouldn't have picked that guy that early. Trey Benson, the running back from Florida State, one of my favorites in the third round at 66. We talked about him earlier. Isaiah Adams, the guard out of Illinois, well-regarded. Only a few picks later. Again, they had 3 third-round picks, so they get Isaiah Adams at 71. And then they get Tip Ryman, his teammate from Illinois, who we saw at the Shrine Bowl, at 82. So 43, 66, 71, 82, and 90. They just went on a straight run here, and it's all picks. Well, it's not all picks, but it's a lot of picks that Monty stacked up. And then, drum roll please, I think this is one of the biggest steals of the draft. Elijah Jones, the cornerback from Boston College, at 90th overall. Now, if you switch Melton,
I knew you were going to say this.
of course.
If we just
wouldn't
pretend that the other thing happened, then it's great.
I feel better already. Elijah Jones, one of the hidden gems as far as I'm concerned in this defensive class overall, not just cornerbacks. Extremely long, physical, fast, smart player who was tremendous from a statistical perspective. Again, playing against very high-level competition. Love Elijah Jones. Dadrian Taylor Demerson, the safety, also known as Rabbit, out of Texas Tech, one of our favorites that we interviewed down at Shrine Bowl in the 4th round at 104. I thought they were lucky to get him that late. I really thought he could have gone in the 80s.
I honestly really did think that he had a shot to go around where Melton went. And Melton, I thought that, honestly, for me, just to defend Max Melton, I thought that was okay at 43. I understand why some people thought it was early. But considering the tools,
a lot of tools.
You don't find tools like that often outside of the 2nd round. And I think that's a pick where you look at your DB coach and you say, all right, bud, do your job.
Fix him up.
We brought you here to make that into a Pro Bowl corner.
Yep.
And he's got tools, man. He's a great kid, too. So I believe in it just because when you take a player that talented, that is extremely coachable, you trust your coach to just make it happen. You trust them to develop. So I get it.
And he signed off on it.
And
Let's be clear. This was not some spring, what's in the box? We got you a Max Melton. I'm sure he had input and said, no, I'm good with that. Let's go.
And I'm sure he had input on Rabbit too, who again I thought very easily could have been, taken somewhere around 50 to 60.
Look, the secondary coaches in general are pretty happy after the draft. You come out with Max Melton, you get Elijah Jones, Dadrian Taylor Demerson, and Jaden Davis from Miami way down. We'll talk about him in a second. But moving on, Xavier Thomas, the edge from Clemson, who we also saw at the Shrine Bowl in the 5th round, 138. Only reason he lasted this long is injury history, which is incredibly spotty. If you go back 3 years ago, I know it seems like a long time, and watch early Xavier Thomas tape at Clemson, you're talking about a top 15 in the draft overall talent. Like that level of explosion, impact on the defensive pass rush, like very, very talented player who I hope stays healthy because, boy, he can get after it when he does. Christian Jones, the offensive tackle from Texas, again, a player that lasted a lot longer than I thought. 5th round, 162. I thought he had a chance to go in that late sort of 2nd bubble of tackles, early 3rd, which would have been end of the 2nd round in this draft, top of the 3rd round. I thought by the end of the 3rd round, Christian Jones is probably going to be off the board, lasts all the way down into the 5th. Cardinals are the lucky recipients there. Tajuan Palmer, the wide receiver from UAB, in the 6th round at 191. And then Jaden Davis, who I mentioned earlier, the cornerback from Miami, the 7th round at 226, rounds it out. That is a whole lot of talent. And Monty, I think, just fully acknowledging, look, the hit rate is not going to be perfect. I'm going to take a bunch of swings because I need a bunch of players. And there is a lot of talent on that drafted roster.
Beyond Marvin, right, what did we talk about their main struggles were? It was, okay, they don't have guys to rush the passer.
Fixed.
They don't have guys to stop the run.
Fixed.
At least partly fixed, because we know that Darius is really good at stopping the run. Yep. And they don't have DBs that they trust.
Fixed. I mean, they took swings. Did they solve the problem is the question we always want to ask with these teams. Here are the problems. We lay that out at the top. This is why last season didn't go the way they wanted it to. What did they do to fix that? Is it coaching? Is it free agency? Is it the draft? Is it all three? There's a lot of fixes on this list for the Cardinals.
And if you thought they were good at running the ball before, wait until they start running behind Trey McBride and Tip Ryman on the field at the same time. Like, this team is going to live in 12 personnel once they get the lead, and they're going to run and run and run and run, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Like, this team is going to be so annoying to play against. Like, just so fucking irritating because they're not going to go away. You're not going to blow them out. Like, I think they have enough defensive talent now where you're not going to blow them out. Their offense is going to be good enough that they're going to keep pace pretty much no matter what you're doing, because they got weapons galore and they got Kyler Murray, and their protection, other than Jonah, is looking pretty good on paper. They're going to be a bitch and a half to play against. I'm not saying they're going to go out there and win the division, but if you think that Arizona is going to be an easy game on the schedule this year, you're wrong. Like, there's dudes here.
It's rapidly changing. And again, to go paint that picture from 2 years ago and then fast forward to now where we are in the offseason getting ready to march into the 2024 regular season, it is a wholly different picture from the GM to the coaching staff to the roster to the scheme. Like, this is as much change as you can have on a football team in a 2-year period.
That's probably a good segue to our ending summary, where we answer 2 questions. Did this team get better? Did they get worse? Or if you add up all the additions and subtractions, are they roughly the same? If you couldn't tell by everything we've said for the last hour plus, this is a thumbs up.
Thumbs way up.
Like, massively up.
Yeah.
Might be one of the bigger thumbs up of this whole series in terms of teams that have improved since literally the start of this calendar year.
This is massive upgrade, and we've said it in each section as we've gone down. The front office is better. The coaching staff is better. They learned some things. The roster is clearly better in multiple ways. They have things that they just didn't have last year. It's not like they traded one for the other. There's a lot of teams in this series where it's like, well, they lost this big talent, but this is their plan to replace it, so I guess that's even. There was no MHJ on this team last year. There was no Darius Robinson on this team last year. Like, they're there now, plus the additions we talked about. There's no way to look at this. Kyler's going to be healthy, presumably. I mean, certainly to start the year, possibly for the full year. That's a massive upgrade in itself. Like, this team is better.
They even got Miles Murphy as a UDFA.
Yes.
I forgot to bring up the UDFA haul, but
that's okay. He was really the notable one. And again, it's to get beef to the inside of the line. And Kyrus Tonga, we didn't talk about him. He's on our free agency list. That was the replace. Those guys are the potential replacements for Lecky Fotu snaps. Yeah. Get in there and don't move.
There, for the 5 of you that were currently in the process of writing comments about how we forgot about the UDFA haul, we got you. Miles Murphy, let's go.
Bing, done.
All right, let's talk about ceiling and floor. Again, this is ceiling in wins and floor in wins. It's going to be a welcome change of pace for Cardinals fans, because for me, for the first time in a while, my ceiling for the Arizona Cardinals is double digits. I think they could win 10 games. I really do. Now, will they? It's a tough ask against a young team. I get it. There's going to be struggles.
Tough division.
Very tough division. Like, their best case scenario is splitting 3-3 with all these other great teams. And it's probably not going to happen. They're probably going to go 2-4. But if everything breaks their way, they stay healthy. Marvin is who we think he is. Darius is who we think he is. They run the ball well again. They play better defense. They just show they can cover literally anybody ever. This team could win 10 games because there's a lot of talent there. My floor, though, is 6. Because, again, young team, all the young team problems that we typically see. They're probably going to end up somewhere in the middle, like around 8-ish. But I have a fairly wide range off of that they could hit, just because of let's say, the variance of youth, right? Sometimes it hits high, sometimes it hits low. You never really know which one you're going to get.
Yeah, welcome to high school. My floor is the same as yours at 6 wins. I think there's no way they win less than that, given all the things that we've talked about. My ceiling I struggled with. I wanted to go to double digits. I am enthusiastic about this team. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I capped out at 9, so 9 is my ceiling.
Pussy.
6 is my floor. Feel free. We tend to get very excited about things on paper, and then we get a nice cold bath of water usually in the first month of the season.
Oh, dude, I said the Carolina Panthers are going to win the South last year, man. I ate it hard.
I am trying to learn from my mistakes, and I had the pen over the paper, quivering at 10, and went, no, be reasonable. 9 would be a lot better. That's a huge improvement for this team.
Overall, I'm more positive about this franchise than I have been in a very long time. They still have their problems. They still have their warts. But for the most part, things are finally going right. and it kind of feels like the adults are in charge, and they're doing things the right way. They're building the team the right way, for starters. I couldn't be more excited for Cardinals fans that have been through the ringer over the last a lot of years.
Yeah.
I think it's been a while since they've been able to be this excited. Probably since like the prime Bruce Arians era, like a decade ago.
Yeah.
But again, that was a decade ago.
Oh, yeah. What's honest to goodness hope taste like, Cardinals fans? Let us know in the comments.
There's young Cardinals fans that don't even remember the last time they had a watchable team.
No.
So it's great, man. I truly love to see franchises turn it around like this when they're down in the dumps. I think they're well on their way to doing that. So can't wait to watch them this year for reasons other than just morbid curiosity like in past seasons. I think it's going to be fun to watch them. If you're a Cardinals fan and you want to grab some Cardinals gear, you could do so at our clothing partner Homage, by the way, if you want to directly support your team while indirectly supporting the show. They also carry bootleg gear as well. EJ's wearing it right now. Anything you buy at Homage using our link or our QR code, we get a cut of it. So it doesn't even have to be our stuff. It doesn't even have to be football stuff. It can be anything. And we get a cut of that. So it's a good way to indirectly support the show. For all of you who do directly support the show through our Patreon, especially our executive producers that help make everything work around here, literally keeping these lights
including
running.
us. I mean, we do have to buy coffee every day, lots of it.
Well, it's 9:15 at night and we have one more episode to do, so that coffee's coming in use today. But again, thank you to all of you who've supported us for so long on the Patreon as well. So we'll be back here tomorrow with the Seahawks?
Probably.
I'm trying to recall the draft order in my head to determine who the next team's going to be. I think
Way too late for that.
Who are we recording at 10 o'clock tonight, EJ? I don't know. It's probably Seattle.
The next one.
Anyway, we'll see you with whatever we have tomorrow.